When I first got involved in activism in 2017, there was a real clamour for what were then called the hate preachers to be silenced. And the hate preachers were people like Anjem Chowdhury and extreme radical Islamist clerics that were calling for jihad and calling for all sorts of crazy stuff. And I was very, very uncomfortable with curtailing people's freedom of speech. There are laws that do that already, and quite rightly so, actually. If you're inciting violence or you're inciting terrorism or you're basically suggesting that certain individuals are murdered, that is illegal in British law, and it should be illegal. But to me, that's as far as the attack on freedom of speech should go, or the legislation against freedom of speech should go. And my argument was there shouldn't be such a thing as hate speech, and we should really reject the concept of hate speech, because one man's hate speech is another man's free speech. And of course, as we've seen in the years since 2017, more and more people have been coming under this this authoritarian legislation that has been used to punish people that hold a slightly different view to the current orthodoxy. And the current orthodoxy gets more and more left-wing as the days go by. So from my point of view, freedom of speech was a fundamental issue. And when we wrote the mission statement for Veterans Against Terrorism, and I helped writing mission statements for some of the other groups as well, one of the things I was absolutely insistent upon from my point of view was that freedom of speech would be protected. Obviously, mission statements for small groups are not the same as government legislation. I'm not having any delusions of grandeur. But I felt it was very, very important that we protected the fundamentals, which are this. It's basically freedom. Freedom is the most important thing to any man. We should have free speech. We should have freedom of religion. We should have freedom of movement, which is absolutely being curtailed at the minute. We should have freedom of assembly, freedom to protest. All of those freedoms to me are absolutely non-negotiable. When I'm talking about freedom of movement, I'm not talking about freedom of movement between countries. I'm talking about freedom of movement within the country. It's ironic, isn't it, that open borders has been pushed upon us, and at the same time as open borders have been pushed upon us, we're being told that we can't, that they want to create cities where you can only go within 15 minutes of where you actually live. It's complete insanity. But there you go, that's a little aside. But freedom to me is vitally important. Now, those freedoms have been curtailed massively. Many people have been locked up for expressing their views, and we know a lot of them. Many people have been cancelled from public life for expressing their views. And many other people have just gone quiet. They've stopped talking. I've had people in my own personal life, I've been attacked, my reputation's been attacked, I've been smeared, I've been slandered, I've had people try to damage my business, and for a while I went quiet because I was thinking, well, this is, I've got to think about my livelihood and so on and so forth. But the reality is nothing I'm saying is extreme or wrong. I'm speaking what I believe to be right and what I believe to be true. And if people disagree with it, that's completely up to them. But I'm not going to stop saying the things that I believe to be true because certain people want to silence me and certain people want to use what I believe as a weapon against me. And those people are out there, believe you me. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start doing videos on a regular basis about these core values that we believe in. And again, freedom of speech is such a fundamental one. If you go back through history, and I'm not talking about even recent history, we saw it in the 20th century where freedom of speech was crushed by the communists for 70 years, maybe more. Even now in North Korea and China, freedom of speech and Cuba, and any of these totalitarian states, freedom of speech is squashed by the state. But what's happened, there's been a creeping totalitarianism that's come into the West. And basically what I guess a lot of commentators call the blob, which I suppose we could sum up by saying the media elite, the civil service establishment elite, the security elite, some people in the security services, the judiciary, including the police and the courts, and of course a lot of leading political figures have basically conspired to silence people and are conspiring to push the country into a direction that the vast majority of the people don't want it to go. And obviously, a massive part of that is the educational establishment has been taken over by these people as well. So there's a huge push to silence any views that go against the current orthodoxy, whether it's on healthcare, whether it's on migration or immigration, whether it's on freedoms, whatever it is, there's a massive push. Whether it's on the war in Ukraine, there's a massive push to silence people who don't support the orthodoxy. And that's very, very dangerous. And I think it's quite right for people who have a different view to be able to speak those views and say what they believe. And that's what I'm going to continue to do. And like I say, I stopped making videos for personal reasons probably about 4 or 5 months ago. But now I'm gonna be back with a vengeance, and I'll be back as long as I can before YouTube ban me for breaking some of their community standards. I'll give you an example of the censoriousness of YouTube. I put a video up probably over a year ago now, and it was a video being very critical of terrorist organisations in Northern Ireland who were still active, Republican terrorist organisations that were still active. I put a video up criticising them and showed some footage of one of their shows of strength. That video was banned because it said I was glorifying terrorism. Go figure that one out. So you put a video up criticising something and the video is banned by YouTube for promoting terrorism, which is absolutely ridiculous. And of course, that's another part of the blob. Big tech is another part of the blob. So what we all need to do as individuals and as people who have a voice, because everybody has a voice, everybody can set a YouTube channel. Look, I haven't got many followers. I've got about 10,000 followers, if that. And I think I'm probably shadow banned on most of the platforms that I'm on. But we've got to use the small voices that we have to encourage other people to stand up. And if everybody sets up a YouTube channel and starts talking, even if you only had 20, 30, 40, 50 followers, it doesn't matter. If you're communicating with people and communicating truth to people and speaking truth to the blob, you know, people, the lefties talk about speaking truth to power when they don't realize they're the ones that actually have the power. And that's another thing we're going to look at. I want to look at the very real dangers of the far left and how Lineker was comparing the Conservative government, our current Conservative government, with 1930s Germany, when the reality is the comparison should be completely flipped, because the Nazi regime was an anti-Judeo-Christian regime that called itself socialist. It was nationalist and socialist in a very similar way that the IRA were national socialists. They called themselves national socialists. They enacted very, very statist, totalitarian policies, very similar to what Lenin did, very similar to what Stalin was doing. And of course, until Hitler fell out with Stalin, and thank goodness Hitler did fall out with Stalin, the communists and the National Socialists of Germany collaborated together to basically take over countries that thankfully now have got their freedom, but it took a long time for them to get their freedom. And we should also remember, because I think this is the thing, we need to look at socialism, we need to look at the left and realise how very, very dangerous and how many graves that people call themselves socialists, including the Nazis, have filled in the 20th century. So as I move forward making videos, I want to look at the left and look at the tactics they use and look at how much they hate people that believe in freedom, believe in liberty, believe in true democracy, and believe in true national sovereignty. And I think that's a worthwhile exercise, because if things keep going the way they're going, we're going to have a socialist government, whether it's wearing a Tory rosette or wearing a Labour rosette. We're going to be under socialism in a big way in the years to come, and we've got to fight against that. And we've also got to look at things like the globalization problem. We've got to look at things like the World Economic Forum. And of course, whenever you look at these things, straight away you're branded as a right-wing extremist. Now, if you talk about globalism, you're told you're an anti-Semite. And if anybody knows me and knows my stand on Israel, since I was a kid, it is laughable to accuse anyone with my views of being an anti-Semite, because the opposite is completely the case. I've never been against Israel or the Jewish people. But you talk about globalism now, straight away you're branded as someone that's been anti-Semitic. So we've got to fight against the propaganda of the left, and we can do it bit by bit, person by person, and that's what I'm going to do over the next weeks and months. I'm going to try and make as many videos as I can, and hopefully people that are watching will enjoy them. You can criticize them, you can criticize me, you can attack me. It's that's what free speech is all about, but I will keep talking until they silence me. See you all soon.